You had absolutely no right to destroy that piece of equipment. That camera was HOA property installed under my direct authority, and you deliberately destroyed it, and I will be pursuing every legal option available to me starting today. You have 14 days to pay, or I will take this further. Homeowners Association President Winifred Croft showed up at the front door of 44 Cedarwood Lane and demanded compensation for what she called destroyed HOA property. A hidden camera she had personally installed inside the homeowner's living room without his knowledge or consent while he was overseas, and told him that failing to pay $2,500 in damages within 14 days would result in a lien filed against his deed with the county recorder's office and a civil lawsuit that would follow him for years. She said it with complete confidence, standing on the doorstep of a man who had just discovered she had been recording the inside of his home for 3 full weeks. What she did not know was that the homeowner had already called his attorney before she finished her very first sentence. That the fabricated gas leak she had used to obtain his house keys was already under investigation by the county sheriff's office. And that the federal wiretapping charge, the unlawful entry charge, and the civil lawsuit being prepared against her were about to make her demand for $2,500 look like the least embarrassing thing she had done in the past month. Michael Lewis, 39, a supply chain manager for a logistics firm based out of San Antonio, had lived at 44 Cedarwood Lane in the Pinehurst Commons subdivision of New Braunfels, Texas, for 3 years. Pinehurst Commons sat in Comal County, a middle-class neighborhood of brickfront homes, wide, clean sidewalks, and the kind of quiet street where people knew their neighbors well enough to trust them with a spare key. Michael had bought his home after years of renting and had maintained it without complaint or incident from the very day he moved in. He was organized, methodical, and not the kind of man who forgot where he put things or left situations unresolved. His relationship with Winifred Croft had been contentious almost from the beginning. Winifred, 55, had served as HOA president of Pinehurst Commons for 7 years and had developed a particular focus on Michael that went well beyond standard enforcement. Over his 3 years on Cedarwood Lane, she had filed violation notices against his property for grass length, driveway cracks, a garden hose left coiled in the side yard, and a motion sensor light she claimed was too bright for community standards. None of the fines carried any solid bylaw basis, and Michael had contested every single one of them in writing without paying a single dollar. This had made him, in Winifred's estimation, the most non-compliant resident in Pinehurst Commons, and in his own estimation, the only one paying close enough attention to catch her making things up. In late June, Michael traveled overseas for a work assignment expected to last 4 weeks. Before leaving, he handed his spare key to his neighbor Samson Harper at number 46, a retired schoolteacher who had lived on Cedarwood Lane for 11 years and whom Michael trusted completely without question. He told Samson the key was strictly for emergencies and left for the airport feeling entirely settled about the arrangement. 10 days into his trip, his phone rang. It was Samson. There had been a call from Winifred Croft warning of a potential gas leak at 44 Cedarwood Lane and stating that HOA maintenance needed immediate access to check the property. Samson, acting in good faith and genuinely concerned, had handed over the key. By the time Michael called the gas company directly to verify the report, there was no record whatsoever of any leak detection or service call on Cedarwood Lane. None at all. Michael filed a note in his phone, finished out his trip, and came home. Before we go any further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. We genuinely love seeing where everyone is tuning in from. And if you believe that fabricating an emergency to gain entry into someone's home while they are overseas is one of the most serious violations of trust an HOA president can possibly commit, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and join us right here on HOA Unhinged. Michael came home from his overseas trip on a Thursday evening unpacked, ate, and went to bed. The house felt completely normal. Nothing looked out of place. He spent the first few days back settling into his routine, going to work, checking his mail, and catching up on everything he had missed while he was away. He did not think much further about the gas leak call because there had been no leak and no damage, and the house was exactly as he had left it. He assumed it had simply been a mistake or a misunderstanding and let it drift to the back of his mind while he returned to his regular life. It was 6 days after he returned home that he found it. He was rearranging some books on the shelf in his living room on a Sunday evening when he noticed something that did not belong. A small device tucked behind a decorative item on the third shelf, positioned at an angle that gave it a clear, unobstructed line of sight across the entire room. He picked it up and turned it over carefully in his hands. It was a compact wireless camera, the kind that records continuously and transmits footage remotely. It had been placed deliberately and carefully by someone who knew exactly what they were doing and exactly where to position it for maximum coverage. Michael stood in the middle of his living room for a long time, holding that camera in his hands. He thought about the gas leak call. He thought about Samson handing over the key in good faith. He thought about the 6 days he had already spent back in his own house, completely unaware that a device had been recording every moment of his life inside it. Then he walked into his kitchen, grabbed a hammer, and destroyed the camera on his back porch that same night. The next morning at 8:14 a.m., Winifred Croft was standing at his front door. She was dressed in her usual pressed blouse, with her HOA lanyard around her neck and her clipboard tucked under her arm, and she was already talking before he had even fully opened the door. She told him that he had destroyed HOA property, that the camera was a legitimate community monitoring device installed under her authority as president, and that she was pursuing both criminal charges and a civil claim of $2,500 against his deed to cover the replacement cost. She said the words, community monitoring device, the way a person says something they have rehearsed carefully and without making eye contact. Michael looked at her for a long moment without saying anything. Then he asked her one question. He asked her which section of the Pinehurst Commons HOA bylaws authorized the installation of recording devices inside a private residential property. Winifred told him she did not need a specific bylaw because her authority as president covered community safety measures across the entire subdivision. Michael nodded once, told her his attorney would be in touch, and closed his front door. He was already on the phone before he reached the kitchen. Michael's attorney, a civil litigation specialist named Gerald Owe, based out of San Antonio, reviewed the facts in a single meeting and told Michael that what Winifred Croft had done was not an HOA dispute. It was a federal crime. The installation of a hidden recording device inside a private residence without the owner's knowledge or consent violated the Federal Wiretapping Act under 18 U.S.C. Section 2511, a statute carrying criminal penalties of up to 5 years per violation. Regardless of what was actually recorded, and regardless of what title the person installing the device held within their community, Gerald filed a federal complaint that same week and contacted the Comal County Sheriff's Office with a full written account of the fabricated gas leak, the unauthorized entry, and the camera discovery. Samson Harper gave a recorded statement to the sheriff's office 2 days later. He described the call from Winifred in precise detail, the urgency in her voice, the specific language she had used about the gas leak, and the way she had assured him that HOA maintenance needed immediate access to protect the property. He had acted in good faith on every single word of it. The sheriff's office pulled phone records and confirmed that no gas leak report had ever been filed with any utility provider or emergency service in New Braunfels on the date Winifred made her call. To Samson, the leak had never existed. The call had been made for one purpose only. Then Gerald pulled the HOA bylaws for Pinehurst Commons from the Comal County Clerk's office, all 47 pages, and searched every section for language authorizing interior property access, monitoring, or surveillance of any kind. There was nothing. Not a clause, not a subsection, not a single sentence that gave Winifred Croft or any board member the right to enter a resident's home or install any device inside it under any circumstance. Winifred had invented the authority in exactly the same way she had invented the gas leak. Gerald included both findings in the federal complaint and the civil lawsuit filing and submitted them the very same morning. Winifred's attorney called his office that afternoon. Gerald told them his client had no interest in a conversation. The Comal County District Attorney's Office accepted the criminal referral from the Sheriff's Department and filed charges against Winifred Croft within 30 days of the complaint being submitted. The charges were serious, and they were multiple. Unauthorized entry into a private residence under Texas Penal Code 30.05, installation of a hidden surveillance device under Texas Penal Code 16.02, and a separate federal wiretapping charge filed concurrently by the FBI field office in San Antonio. Winifred hired a criminal defense attorney the same week the charges were filed. The retainer alone cost her $25,000. Her civil lawsuit against Michael over the destroyed camera was dismissed at the very first hearing. The judge did not need long to reach that decision. No court in any jurisdiction was going to entertain a claim for compensation over a recording device that had been illegally installed inside a private home. Winifred's attorney did not appeal the dismissal. Gerald Owe's civil lawsuit against Winifred personally and the Pinehurst Commons HOA board collectively was an entirely different matter. It named both parties for unauthorized entry, illegal surveillance, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and negligent oversight by a board that had allowed one person to operate without accountability for 7 consecutive years. The HOA board's insurance carrier reviewed the filing and immediately began distancing itself from Winifred's individual actions. 3 board members resigned within 2 weeks of receiving their copies of the lawsuit. The remaining members voted unanimously to remove Winifred from the presidency and hired an independent attorney to represent the board separately from her. The civil case settled 8 months later. The amount was never made public, but it covered Michael's legal fees, damages for the period of unlawful surveillance, and a sum that reflected the full severity of what Winifred had engineered against a man who had simply gone overseas for work and trusted his neighbor with a spare key. Winifred Croft sold her home on Cedarwood Lane before the criminal case ever concluded. Michael Lewis changed his locks, installed his own cameras along the exterior of 44 Cedarwood Lane, and returned to his routine without ever looking over his shoulder again. If this story reminded you that your home is the one place no title, no lanyard, and no fabricated emergency should ever be allowed to violate, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have ever felt like your HOA president was crossing lines that had nothing to do with community standards and everything to do with control, drop your story in the comments, because we genuinely want to hear it. See you on the next one, right here on HOA Unhinged.